Scott Kushner, who covers the Pelicans for the Advocate, kind enough to join us here on OTB, give his insight. Scott, thank you, man. Good morning.
How are y'all today?
Doing all right. Your first initial reaction when you hear the trade was what?
Uh, thank God it's over. I mean, it was great for content. I'm not going to lie about that. It gave us something to talk about, but I think it was time for this franchise to move forward. I think everyone involved kind of felt that way. And I think there were people who were disappointed it was the Lakers. Simply, I think spite is a real emotion that comes through with this stuff and a real factor. But the truth is that this was probably among the best moves they could have made. They extracted a whole bunch of picks. They extracted a long timeline out of it. Do I think that the players they got are sure things necessarily, or not even close to sure things, but even proven commodities? And no, I mean, those guys we're still very much a work in progress. And so you're looking at a high risk, high reward type situation that David Griffin gave himself. And, when you're dealing with someone like Anthony Davis, you sometimes feel like you can get a little bit more certainty than that. And I don't think they got that. But I think there is a lot of upside if things work out in his favor.
What's the most positive point? Because you never were going to get equal trade value for Anthony Davis. And when you look at this trade, what's the best piece for New Orleans?
The best piece is just owning basically the Lakers' future for about 5 years. And what they did is essentially put a bet, and they shorted the stock of the Los Angeles Lakers from 2021 to 2025 and said, hey, at some point, these guys are going to screw this up. I've been, anyone who's been watching this knows this isn't Dr. Jerry Buss's Lakers anymore. Jerry West didn't walk into that door. It's a different thing. And so the idea that they're going to be very good with LeBron in his prime and Anthony Davis in his prime, and then the bet that the Pelicans made is that after that, things are going to go badly and that the Pelicans are going to have an opportunity to nab a really good draft pick or two. Now, that could completely backfire, and there are a few franchises that could bounce back and stay up as well as the Lakers can, just because of all the natural advantages they own. But that's the bet that David Griffin made, and I think it makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels just because you've given yourself such a long timeline when you're thinking of, hey, we're building this thing around a 19-year-old. So let's give ourselves a really long time to get this right. And in that way, it makes a lot of sense. But it is, everyone's kind of calling it like a slam dunk. It's risky. I mean, there's a chance that this kind of blows up and you end up with a bunch of picks in the 20s and they don't cash in until 2025. I mean, at that point, what have you really gotten?
And I'm talking to Scott Kushner at Scott D. Kushner on Twitter. He has a great article on The Advocate right now talking about what he just touched on, which is like David Griffin is basically banking on the Lakers falling apart in the future. Headline could have been The Big Short, but you know what do I know, Scott?
I don't write them, man.
So you mentioned for the so this is a long-term focused deal. However, in Jrue Holiday, you have a piece that is ready to win immediately. So it looks like to me the Pelicans want to do kind of what the Celtics did, right? Where you want to remain relevant while kind of building long-term for the future. So how do they add in the short term to keep Holiday happy, or do they look to move Holiday?
So if you talk to anyone over there, and they're bashful about it, anyone on their line will tell you that they are not moving Jrue Holiday.
Okay.
They love Jrue Holiday. They think he is a cornerstone piece. They think he's, basically when they talk about Jrue Holiday, you think they're talking about like a first-team All-NBA player.
Yeah.
He's not a first-team All-NBA player, okay? But that's the level at which they sort of describe him. So he's very highly thought of. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of this season or if this season kind of goes off the rails because the timelines are so different that eventually you start looking that way. But for right now, they are confident that Jrue is the guy they want to have in there as their best player at the moment and then allow him to kind of teach Zion how to be a professional in the league, to keep Zion in a winning situation to where he's not going in and losing 60 games his first year, which a lot of rookies end up doing. They really value Zion's mentality, his desire to win, and that's something they think Jrue will really help cultivate going forward. So I don't think they'll move Holiday. I think in a lot of ways it makes a ton of sense to move Holiday, considering all of the various timelines that are involved here. and cap space and all those kinds of things you have to keep in mind. But I would not expect it at this point. But as we've seen, things change very quickly in the league.
And so let's talk about maybe where you would slot the Pelicans right now. Let's say that these moves stay pat where they're at right now, and so you end up with Lonzo Ball, you got Lonzo the 1, Jrue the 2, maybe Ingram at the 3, Zion at the 4. I don't know who plays the 5 yet, but you got Hart coming off the bench. Like, where does that team rank in this Western Conference?
Honestly, Steve-Bob, who knows? I mean, It's really I could see it being all over the place. I really hate the idea of projecting out a 19-year-old to be like a really strong contributor on a playoff.
That's a
Not
great
to say
point.
it's never happened. Like Donovan Mitchell was that guy 2 years ago, and Ben Simmons, I guess, had a year off, but he was that guy 2 years ago also. Like, you can be a rookie and play really well and be on a good team. Like, it's not mutually exclusive that you can't do it, but it is difficult. Like, look how good Trae Young was last year. Look how good Luka Doncic was last year, and they were not good. Like, those teams were bad. And it's just a really difficult thing to put a 19-year-old position to not only play well, but to also win games in a league where they're surrounded by, grown men. And Zion is a unique talent and certainly a unique physical presence. So perhaps it's a lot different because I think his body is more ready-made for the NBA than, say, Anthony Davis was when he came in. But I do think it's a lot to put on him to say, all right, you've got to be the second-best player on a playoff team right now, and you've got to kind of be that missing X-factor piece from a team that won 30 games last year to a team that you think is going to win 48. It's a big jump.
Scott Kushner of The Advocate joining us here in ESPN New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Alexandria. You think they stay at 4?
No, I would say it's less than 50% probability they keep the pick.
Wow.
I mean, there's a chance, but they're shopping it very aggressively. And there's, a lot of suitors out there who want it. I think between the options of, jumping back a couple picks in the draft to go get someone like DeAndre Hunter or Derek Culver even, and then the possibility of, just kind of packaging it for a player who can help you right away and like a real established player closer to Jrue Holiday's time than he is to Zion Williamson, and allow you to – because that's really when you would say, okay, this team can make the playoffs. If you go get a guy who's a clear either second best or best player on their team right now, all of a sudden they're playoff ready. But that's a big ask, and I think the name that everyone throws out there is Bradley Beal. I mean, the Wizards don't have a GM at the moment. So it seems hard to believe that the owner is going to sign off on some deal and not allow the GM that he's hiring to trade an all-star player. I don't know. Anything's possible.
They're just going into the draft without a GM?
Yeah, they haven't had a GM for 10 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unreal. What?
What? An interim.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So it's a pretty remarkable process. But, it's hard to, that's kind of the big fish that's sitting out there because that's a team that could really use a high draft pick. But when you talk to all these draft experts, I am not a draft expert. When you talk to all the draft experts, they tell you it's a 3-person draft.
Yeah.
That really there's 3 guys who really project out to be all-stars, and everybody else projects out to be a guy. And that is a pretty drop off them when you're going from 3 to 4. And I think the value of that pick will kind of go with that. So they got to figure out what they can get. The Pelicans, I think they're willing to move it. I think they're really eager to move it, in fact. But if they can actually get value from it is a different story.
Scott, I've got to if you could help me with a real quick explanation. So people keep talking about the deal being finalized on July 6th versus finalized later in July and some of the implications that has for the Lakers cap space, et cetera. My question is, though, so how are the Pelicans picking on Thursday if the deal can't be finalized until July?
Because the NBA is ridiculous. I mean, it's just silly. There's a moratorium on player movement, essentially, that doesn't allow you to trade picks before, in the weeks leading up to the draft and from basically the trade deadline all the way until the end of free agency or the moratorium on free agency, which is July 6th. So, you've probably seen it hundreds of times now at this point of guys putting on hats at teams that they're never going to go to because the pick was traded on draft night.
Yeah.
So this is a similar situation. They control the Lakers pick. The Lakers can theoretically pick whoever they want in that situation, but it would obviously kill the deal.
Yeah.
So the Pelicans control the Lakers pick. They can then send it to someone else, and then they control the Lakers pick. So it's all kind of a based system, I suppose. But it is, whoever it is will be putting on a Lakers hat and will never put on a Lakers jersey.
So weird. At Scott D. Kushner on Twitter. Great stuff this morning, man. Thanks for hopping on with us.
Absolutely. You guys have a good one.
All right, man. There
Thanks,
is Scott Kushner joining us for an update there on the trade that has been the big news of the weekend with Los Angeles getting Anthony Davis, the Lakers sending back 3 picks and 3 players. We'll close out Monday's edition of Off the Bench next.